Alrighty, everybody. So here we are yet again. I'm gonna make another video. Nobody really watches them, but maybe some person will see them. Hopefully, this one specifically, and tell others. And if it's if it has any misinformation, then so be it. Also, I'm just going to state real quick I'm holding my phone, even though it's on a base, and I'm probably going to talk fast. Because one, I talk fast when I get heated, and two, there is a kitty monster behind me, or behind the phone. So I have to be on constant watch for that. So, with that said, here we go. Already a minute in. Look at that. Too long for a TikTok. But anyway, I wanted to talk about COVID, of course. That's what I'm going to name the video when I get done with this. It's going to be about COVID and how I'm kind of annoyed, really, really, really frustrated at the way everything is going nowadays. Like, I was at a protest with a friend, not any kind of political protest. He works at Kroger's. And when I was there, there was one woman in particular who has the ear of several elected officials, and she literally said to me that she hopes that they write mandatory masks into the law books. She literally said she hopes that wearing a mask becomes not wearing a mask becomes illegal. She literally told that to me, that she hopes that not wearing a mask will now officially and forever be illegal. And that pissed me off to no end, because I'm like, how do you not see that this is taking away your freedoms? Like, they are literally telling you what to wear. They are literally saying, hey, if you don't wear this article of clothing, this actually, it's not an article of clothing. If you don't wear this unnecessary accessory, you will go to jail. You will literally lose your freedom if you're not wearing this completely unnecessary piece of cloth. So I wonder who that sounds like. Oh, yeah, Nazi Germany. I forgot. Oh, wait, of course I forgot. They burned history. They fucking tore down, they fucking erased the thing. And that's another thing that pisses me off. There are literally teenagers today. There are teenagers, a lot of them, who think that the Holocaust is. Sorry, got distracted. But they think that the Holocaust is literally made up because that's what their teachers are telling them. It's something, it's not in history books anymore. It's slowly being pushed out of the history books. So of course, if it's not officially documented somewhere, the teenagers are going to have no choice but to think that it's made up. So sorry, I'm just going to move over here for a second. um Lost my train of thought. If they remove it from the history books and it's not officially documented somewhere, people are going to think that it's made up, that it's just hearsay, because hearsay is not a valid form of history. And so they're going to think it's not real. That's what happens when you tear down monuments and you tear out literally entire chapters of our history. So there's that bitch rant, and that's actually the end all be all of that bitch rant. So anyway, back to the COVID thing. She literally wants to make it illegal to not wear a mask. And I can't see how she, in her brain, thinks that that is okay. I don't see how this insane nut job of a woman, and I hope she watches this. If nobody else watches this, you from the Kroger protest, I hope you see this. And I hope you know that you are a fucking fruitcake. You're not just an ordinary fruitcake. You're one of those lumpy hard fruitcakes that have been stuck in the closet for stuck in the back of the pantry for 20 years. You are a special kind of fruitcake. So yes, if nobody else watches this, I hope she watches this, or I hope my friend watches it and gives it to her, even if to be malicious. I don't care. I want her to see this because no, I cannot in good conscience literally dictate that somebody go to prison for something so stupid. How can anybody be okay with it? Okay, well, I'm repeating myself. I'm talking in circles. I'm being a politician now. Anyway. What I wanted to talk about, the main thing that I wanted to talk about is the thing that I keep seeing on TikTok, the thing that I keep seeing all over the internet and all over Facebook and all over Twitter and all over, well, that's basically it. I don't have any other social media. TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, that's about it. I have Parler, but you're not going to get lies on there. My brain stopped again. Give me a second. Oh, the manner of death versus the mechanism of death argument for COVID-19. So basically, the manner of death is the cause of death. I don't know if I've got that completely right, but I know that basically the manner of death is the cause of death, what actually killed the person. But the mechanism of death is what caused the cause of death. And there are people out there, there are medical professionals out there who will tell you that the mechanism of death, well, there are people who will tell you, people out there who will tell you that they know for certain what the mechanism of death is when you can't always know for something that is fluid and subjective. Okay, so scenario one is a completely definitive mechanism of death. The scenario is a car crash. The car crash is the mechanism. The cause of death are the injuries suffered from the car crash. You are in a car crash, let's say, I don't know, something happens, a piece of glass pierces your lung, and there's going to be a lot of medical talk. My friend wants to get involved again. There's going to be a lot of medical talk. I don't know the medical talk, the medical lingo for it, but there is, punctured lung, flu, or blood in the lungs, something along those lines. In that case, the mechanism of death is completely clear, and it should be always and forever. If you're in a horrific car crash and something like that happens, well, yes. But don't let that confuse you. There are going to be medical professionals out there, like nurses, the also prestigious nurse, or somebody who's studied medicine for maybe a couple of years in a business college that, I don't know, supplements by, giving medical coding or something stupid like that. So they know all the fancy terms, but they're not good enough to even be a full nurse or a full doctor. And you're even going to have some doctors who don't want to go against the status quo. I'm not going to say anything bad about them because they probably no, they most likely are just caught in the middle of all this bullshit. So I'm not going to talk shit about doctors. Y'all are doing great. You all are doing wonderfully. You have my sympathies for doing what you can to just stay afloat in the midst of this river, this ocean of bullshit. So you have my sympathies and my admiration. But y'all be fucking wrong on a lot of shit. Y'all are wrong a lot, a lot, a lot. And I'm going to say that now. So, getting back to the topic at hand, I know I digressed again. Sorry. Scenario 1 is a car crash in which the mechanism of death was the car crash. So then we get to scenario 2. Well, the mechanism of death is COVID? Really? Okay, so scenario 1A. A person who is otherwise healthy contracts COVID. Well, that's shitty luck. Let's say you somebody my age. I've been healthy until I was 30. I was perfect health until I hit 30. So let's use someone like me, somebody who was perfect health until they hit 30. Let's say this person somehow contracts COVID because, I don't know, they were out without a mask, whatever. Hell, they could just be stuck in their house. The studies are showing that there's still a spike with people in quarantine. So they could have just been stuck in their house and got COVID. But again, another digression. This person has COVID. 30 years pristine health. Well, because he got COVID, he then developed a form of pneumonia. And then, I know, I switched the pronoun to he in my head because, again, I'm thinking about using myself as an example. So fuck, let's just say I. So let's say, whatever, I'm in the peak of health until I was 30, and then I get COVID at 30 years old, and then I'm 31, but still. I got COVID when I turned 30, and because I got COVID, I got pneumonia. And then because I got pneumonia, complications occurred and I died. Okay, so here's me dead. I was in the peak of health. Again, it sounds pretty clear. I mean, people will use medical jargon and they will use smart people talk to let you think that the mechanism of death was COVID. Because if you didn't get COVID, you wouldn't have got pneumonia. And well, I wouldn't have got pneumonia. I wouldn't have had the pneumonia-related complications, and I wouldn't have died. Therefore, it's a COVID-related death. It is officially a COVID-related death because the mechanism of death was COVID, even though it wasn't the cause of death. Or the manner of death, if I have that right. Which, that's a touchy subject because we don't know much about COVID. Even a year later, we still don't know shit about COVID. I don't, like, for example, literally it is mandatory that a lot of people take your temperature before you go into a building to see if you have COVID, when only a small fraction of people who have had COVID had temperatures. So why are we taking temperatures when we know that it has nothing to do, that a person can not have a temperature and still have COVID? So you have to start taking it apart. Yes, there's a scenario 2B, and I'm going to get to that. But first I want to deconstruct the 2A, in case you were wondering. if anybody's listening at all. Um, so there is also, just a quick aside, I look away from the camera because my wonky eye. People like to make fun of it. A lot of people like to make fun of it. So if I look away, it's hard. I feel that it's less noticeable than if I look directly at the camera. So there's that aside too. Just a quick note 15 minutes after you've already started watching this video. So anyway, we were talking about the mechanism of death. And first, I would like to say that you need to ask yourself, well, which came first, COVID or pneumonia? I mean, in most cases, yes, you got COVID, then like a week later you got pneumonia, and then, well, did you though? Did it happen like that? With how little we know that COVID is right up there with chronic fatigue syndrome. It's what they label you when they can't label you with anything else. Or rather, it's like the antithesis of chronic fatigue syndrome. Chronic fatigue is what they label you when they can't, when literally everything else is inconclusive or a no. And COVID is just something they slap on when they don't know yet. You could have any number of things. So, well, it's COVID. Seasonal allergies, it's COVID. Heartburn, it's COVID. Hiccups, it's COVID. Diarrhea, it's COVID. You have, I don't know, chronic insomnia, it's COVID. You have narcolepsy, it's COVID. Sleep too much, it's COVID. Sleep too little, it's COVID. Eat too much, it's COVID. Eat too little, it's COVID. You see where I'm going with this. They label it with COVID until they can find a more definitive answer. And that's what I think happens in scenario 2A, is that they say you got COVID because you started feeling bad. And then a week later, you got full-on pneumonia. Well, I had a friend who had pneumonia once, and it did not go well for her, but as far as I'm aware, it didn't suddenly come on. It wasn't just like healthy today, bam, full on pneumonia the next day. It probably didn't take a week, but it wasn't the very next day type of thing. Which is my point. That with something as subjective and something as fluid as COVID, you can't definitively know the mechanism of death. It's impossible because of, one, how little we know, and two, there are certain medical professionals with political affiliations or political agendas out there. You can't say there aren't. Just like you can't say there aren't racist doctors, there aren't sexist doctors, there aren't bigoted doctors in some way. You can't say that yours is the one professional without any form of prejudice, because you'd be fucking lying and you'd be fucking wrong. Again, that's another way where doctors know more than us, because theirs is the one field where prejudice doesn't exist because of the Hippocratic Oath. No, that doesn't save you, sweetie. Doctors are still shady and shit. A lot of them are. And then you can't possibly know the mechanism of death. So here we go to scenario 2B. And I want to use myself as an example. The me that is sitting right here telling you this. So let's say, again, I was completely healthy until I was 30, and then bam, I got sick. I got sick with something called C. diff, which affects my immune system. Well, it affects, it affected, it was a long progression of things, but it affected things that affected my immune system. So, in essence, C. diff did affect my immune system. Don't let any medical professional tell you that it does not, because they'll be fucking lying. Oh, look, another a last minute um, political ad. Anyway, eh, let's wait for that to stop ringing. It's distracting. Okay, it stopped ringing. Um, so I was otherwise healthy, perfect. Hell, I thought I was immortal, not literally, of course, but like I thought I never got sick. I got the sniffles once and it lasted 2 days tops and I was good. Like I think I got the flu for a little bit and it was just a couple of days of bad health. Well, I got something that affects my immune system. So let's say I go out, I'm at higher risk of catching COVID. So let's say I go out without my mask or whatever and get COVID. And then let's say that it again leads to pneumonia. And then well, same thing. I go outside, I get COVID, I get pneumonia, I get complications from pneumonia, and then I die. Well, what's the mechanism of death? You'd be wrong if you said COVID, but yet somehow you'd be right? No. If memory serves, my compromised immune system was what allowed me to catch COVID. And if I didn't catch, by these medical professionals' own admission, if you don't catch COVID, if A doesn't happen, then B doesn't happen. Well, what happened to cause A? I would not have caught COVID if it weren't for my immune system. And don't say you can't say that, because it's a valid argument. You can't say that you can't say that. Sorry, I just realized how that sounded in my head. Weird. Anyway, you can't say that you can't say that. Um, it infuriates me that these medical professionals are putting out there that they definitively know that the mechanism of death is COVID when they can't know the unknowable. They're literally saying they know something in which we cannot physically know. It's mostly if you watch like any actual or read any actual medical text, if you study medicine, actual legit medicine in any way, you will know that about half of the time the mechanism of death is subject to the doctor's own discretion. If the doctor thinks it was COVID, then they're going to put down COVID. And honestly, no, that's a whole rabbit hole. But no. So there are two arguments out there. There's one argument. The CDC released a statement saying that there are approximately 10 to 15,000, somewhere between 10 and 15,000 COVID specific deaths. And then there's the other argument that COVID has caused, in some way, shape, or form, more than 200,000. Well, the real number is actually somewhere in between the two. Because people arguing for one side are die hard. Well, they're listening to political propaganda. Medical professionals are subject to this, yes. They are subject to political propaganda. Again, they're just saying what they have to say to keep their jobs and keep their head above water, because as we know, if you don't agree with a liberal, you will be fucking fired. I mean, that's literally the mindset of every liberal. Agree with me or you will lose your livelihood. You will lose your house, you will lose your job, you will lose your marriage. They will take everything from you. And if you don't believe me, just fucking look online. Look up the definition of doxing and look up how many people have actually been doxed. Doxing is a real thing, sweetie. Don't say it's not. If you say it's not, you're a fucking liberal. And that's not a good thing to be. Be better. Be better than a liberal. But anyway, I digress. That's another bitch rant for another video. Don't let the doctors tell you that they know definitively the mechanism for death when they don't. You can't know that the mechanism of death was COVID-19 because we don't know much about COVID-19. Don't let the doctors scare you in to this irrational thinking. Don't let politicians, for you doctors out there, don't let the politicians and the crybaby liberals bully you into making a statement that is not true. And for you doctors out there, don't let politicians bully you into making statements that aren't true. For everyone else out there, don't let anyone bully you into feeling a way you don't want to feel. Don't let anyone bully you into doing something you don't want to do. And that ties back into the crazy bitch who said that masks should be mandatory and legal. So, I guess to sum up, you can't know the mechanism of death when the mechanism of death is something fluid and subjective. And that's my whole point. Okay, gonna end that here.